So we don't have an agenda, but there are some things that I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about fan bases, either one, any of them. And I don't want to argue about the fact that I'm a fan of two different football teams. I'm done arguing about it.
Wait, is that even legal?
Of course it's legal. Why wouldn't it be?
So what are the two?
So it's Bears. Bears number one. And then Patriots. Because Chicago, I don't know. Just by default, I guess.
Sure.
I like all the Chicago sports teams. And then I have been a fan of the Patriots since the year 2000. So it's not like I'm hanging on there, but I guess I bandwagoned then, I guess you could say. But
so did you wait? This is a key point here. 2000 or 2001?
See, I remember Drew Bledsoe playing. So that's part of it, I guess. I can't narrow down the exact year, but I just know it's been since before they won that first Super Bowl.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
So I don't know why. I have no idea why I started liking the team, and I just like them even more now that everybody hates them so much. It's just like the Yankees. I like the Cubs and the Yankees too. I pretty much like two teams from every sport. Different conferences. I never mix conferences. I definitely don't mix divisions. But it's just the way it is. For some reason, people have a hard time understanding that.
I think I can get it, but I can see why people are annoyed by it because they're like, "Oh, just pick your team and go on about it." But yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I don't really have a team. Although I told Jason a little while ago, maybe I'll announce it officially here. I think that I'm dubbing myself a Broncos fan, and it's because my wife said to me the other day when my daughter asked for a jersey, she's like, we got to choose a team so you actually have a team that we're cheering for. And she's like, well, we went to a game in Denver, so let's be Broncos fans. So I guess that's what it is. I have a Peyton Manning Broncos jersey, so
I thought all Canadians were required to like the Buffalo Bills. Isn't it like
it seems like a trend?
Isn't that like country law?
No, absolutely not. And I refuse to like the Bills. As I told Jason, I get gear, jerseys, or shirts from every game that I go to in a place. But I've been to 2 or 3 Bills games when I lived in Toronto, and I did not once get any Bills gear. But I went to a Broncos game and got a Manning jersey. Went to a Seahawks game in Seattle and got a Russell Wilson T-shirt. And went to a Bears game and got a Bears hoodie. But nothing Bills.
So it's funny because it's almost like free agency for you. Like you had a free agency period of being a fan. Like you get to shop around. Now you get to pick one. I guess that's one of the benefits of living in Canada, huh?
Well, that and like as I've explained to Jason and I've said other places too, but I got into fantasy football without being a real fan of anybody. So I started playing fantasy first. It made me a fan of the game, and so I never really had an affiliation to any one team. I just liked a bunch of players, so I haven't really set my allegiances in any way. But I think that I'm planting the flag. It's Broncos, I guess, so I can join Steve and him and I can be friends. Maybe at least one person can like him.
That never seems like a good idea.
Do you want to wait and see who ends up being their quarterback first? Like I would wait a little bit, just maybe wait through the offseason before you make that final determination.
Kevin, you're married. You know how this goes. My wife made the decision. It's fine.
Right.
Didn't sound like you had an option.
Listen, football's the one thing that I do not let my wife make the decisions. That's the only thing she gives me. It's the only thing I've asked for, and it works out well for us that way.
That's fair.
Because otherwise I'd be a Lions fan, and that is not happening.
Ooh, gross.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Gut Feeling Podcast. My name is Jason Tran. As always, I'm here with Derek McCreath. What's going on, Derek?
Not too much, man. It's been a good little break. Although, as you know from personal experience, I haven't really let my mind not think about fantasy football pretty much for any single day. But it's been a good kind of time off from podcasting, but happy to get another show out there.
Yeah, I think we've talked maybe about 4 episode lengths worth of content in the last 3 weeks that we haven't been recording, so that's good. And we're joined today by Kevin Cotillo once again, probably 3rd or 4th time with us. What's going on, Kevin?
Not too much. Happy to be here. This will be, I think my third or fourth episode with you guys. Little known fact: the Falafel House podcast, which is obviously my normal show. We recorded earlier this week, and Steve deleted it. So this is nice to get back. I'll still have 2 episodes released, that I was on this week. One from Falafel House and one from you guys. So it was nice to make up that lost episode with you guys. So
it's good to know that we're not the only ones that have that happen to us. A couple times earlier.
Yeah, 2 or 3 maybe. But.
So I have a random question, sort of related to the discussion we were having about fandom and whatnot and fan bases. There was some Twitter back and forth recently that I was involved in on how you can pick your team and selecting teams that are outside of your general region. Now, obviously, Derek, you don't really have a choice because you don't have a team within your general region. Jason, it sounds like you pick your teams based on your region, but then you also pick a second team because you somehow for some reason don't like your region. So, the question really came up: is it allowed if you grew up in a specific place, or don't you have to have some allegiance to your team? And I thought about it. I'm obviously a Boston guy, so I, for the most part, like all of the Boston teams. Actually, I do like all the Boston teams. I don't really have any other teams. It's easy being a New England fan, so that helps. But I thought about it. The more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? Why should your region dictate who you like? I mean, you should be able to pick whoever you want. If just because you were born in a certain area doesn't mean you need to be a fan of that team.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I saw this thing too, and it just didn't make any sense to pick by region. I mean, I grew up, before I really enjoyed football, a Cowboys fan because of my mom. So family influenced my decision on that one. And then I kind of just drifted to Chicago because I started hating the Cowboys, basically. And then that went by region. It just happened to be here, I guess. But I don't think there's an issue with just root for whoever you want to root for.
Well, I can speak to this from a hockey perspective, because when I was a kid growing up, we did have the Winnipeg Jets at the time, and there were a lot of people that liked them, but it seemed like everybody were Toronto Maple Leafs fans, and I just did not want to be a Leafs fan because I absolutely hate the Leafs. And my dad was a Montreal Canadiens fan, and for whatever reason, I wanted to not like the same team as him. So I chose the Quebec Nordiques, which are now the Colorado Avalanche. So it's kind of fitting then if I pick the Broncos as a football team, because I'm still a huge Colorado fan. I'm going to a Jets-Colorado game in a couple weeks here in Winnipeg. So if I take the Broncos, then I'm at least sticking region-wise in terms of Denver teams. Although I don't think I'll ever be a Nuggets fan because the NBA is crap. But
yeah, it's weird to think about what influences what teams you like. I really can't explain why I like any of the teams I do, but just kind of stick with it, I guess. I mean, I've gotten to this point sometimes where I feel like I'm going to give up on the Bears, but.
And then the other side of it is I hate the Yankees because I'm a major Blue Jays fan, and they're within division, obviously. But I have massive respect for what they do, like being a dominant franchise. And the same goes for the Patriots. Like, I feel like I want to hate them, but I have nothing but respect for how damn good they are and how amazing their dynasty is. Like, it's unprecedented, pretty much. Like, I definitely have respect for that, but you still gotta hate them a bit.
I will say the one thing about all this fandom thing, and I like I said, I think you should pick whoever you want, but I do think, and this is probably the only thing I respect about our other co-host Sal, is that I do think once you pick a team, you got to stick with it. Like I don't know about flip flopping, and I don't know how I feel about Jason picking multiple cities and teams, but
Right.
But at least you got to be loyal to whatever team you do select. So if you somehow when you're a kid pick the Raiders, you got to stick through it, even when they hire John Gruden back. So I'll give my buddy Sal props on that. But that's the one thing I will say should be a rule.
Yeah, my change of heart from being a Cowboys fan came from when I realized I can pick my own team. I don't have to just. Well, I still listen to my mom all the time, but I don't have to go with what she likes, And that was like a time where I felt like, okay, pick your team. And then that's what happened, I guess. My mom likes all the Pittsburgh teams. There's no way I could like any of those teams.
Just one more quick question. Winnipeg in Quebec. I assume these are cities of some sort.
They're small cities, but
okay.
But they are cities. One Quebec is a French Quebecois, a French town in the province of Quebec. It's kind of a large one, up close to where you live. Actually, you've probably heard of it. Winnipeg, yes, I can understand. It's a much smaller city. But.
No, I'm obviously kidding. I have heard of Winnipeg and Quebec. Actually, Quebec. A lot of people here from my region went there to get drunk when they were underage. So
they would, yeah, because you can drink in this night. No, it's actually 18 in Quebec. I think it's 18 in Manitoba too. So yeah, I could drink.
What?
Manitoba.
I think that's a bar.
Oh.
Exactly.
So what we're going to do today, I just thought of it. We're going to go player by player, breaking down the Pro Bowl. We're all going to watch it this weekend, right? Okay. All right. Guess not. I actually don't even know who's in the Pro Bowl or how they pick teams. Do they draft teams? Or are they back to NFC and AFC? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You're speaking a foreign language to me.
Yeah, Pro Bowl.
When they moved it to in between, and I think they've moved it back and then back again, but this is the dumbest time to have it.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think they just think if it's after the Super Bowl, then definitely nobody will watch it. But if it's kind of like in between, like it's still football season, maybe they'll get some people.
Yeah,
I'll be watching the Royal Rumble, so I will not be watching
2 weeks after the Super Bowl would be the way to go because you let guys heal up. Maybe guys will actually play. They get to go on their vacations and whatnot, so they don't have to worry about family vacations may be done, and then you'll get more action because it's 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, so people are missing football at that point. So even as crappy of a game as it is, people might actually be more into it.
That's probably a good point because then people are gonna they get over everybody just wants to see the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks after it'll just be okay. I mean, I want to watch something, and okay, there's a game on, even if it's just the Pro Bowl, non-contact, high scoring, or essentially a scrimmage.
That's why even if it only succeeds for 1 year, I do think the XFL will get some ratings at least in the first year because there'll be no football on.
Right.
Is it going to be a different time of year? I haven't followed at all.
It was just announced today, so it's supposed to start almost immediately following the Super Bowl.
Okay, so you guys clearly then don't watch the CFL, which starts like way earlier than the NFL does. Like it starts in like
the what? CFL?
That's right. The Canadian Football League. Trent Richardson played in the Canadian Football League this year.
That's should tell you a little bit about the league.
And Duron Carter.
Did he do it?
Yeah. He actually switched to a quarterback, I think, Duron Carter.
Wow.
I actually have played DFS for Canadian football. So I have followed it mildly. Of course, I was a huge Doug Flutie fan, so
Oh yeah, that makes sense. But you're ridiculous. I haven't even played DFS for Canadian football. I don't.
Sometimes you get bored, man.
The best thing about CFL football is I went to one game this year for tickets. We got just the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and when I walked in, the 50-50 was at $100,000 already, and it ended up at $400,000 total pot. So 200K to the winner, and it went to like a 19-year-old kid, and he's like, "I'm gonna go to Monster Jam."
How do they get that much? What do they charge you per ticket?
It's like $20 for 10 or something like that. But
so basically everyone in the stadium bought one.
And apparently, I didn't realize this before that game, but I just found out a week or two ago that you can actually buy them online even if you're not at the game now. So people are like,
what?
Buying from outside the stadium, and you can buy them for road games too. It's kind of crazy.
So it's basically just the Canadian lottery.
Pretty much.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some real football. Not too much because I know a lot of people are going to be talking about it. But obviously, I would say most of us were surprised about what happened to the Vikings. But we've got Nick Foles and the Eagles against the terrible Patriots, I guess people would call them, or the evil empire, whatever you want to call them. But so the spread on the game is 5 or 5.5 points, which, Kevin, as you know, the Patriots like to keep their playoff games close for some reason. They can't just throttle somebody like they should be. But is so many points for a game like this, or are they just kind of no idea what to do with Nick Foles?
So I think that I don't know about the spread. Like I don't know why. It seems low to me. I think everyone sees, but obviously we all know where the spread comes from, right? The spread comes from where the bets are being made. So, and I think I forget what it was when it opened. I think it opened at 7, maybe, and it's down to 5.
I think I saw 6 for the most part.
Yeah. So it's going down. The gap is getting smaller, which means there's a lot of people thinking that the Eagles are going to keep this close, which is a little crazy in my mind. I think everyone sees the Nick Foles game from last week, and the guy played the game of his life. I'm not going to take anything away from him. Minnesota was cooked, like a quarter and a half into the game, and it was over. So, look, he played great and he's looked serviceable. I'm not going to say great because he had maybe 1.5 really good games and then one really bad game, and then the rest was kind of just marginal. So I'm not going to say that he's looked great or anything, but last week he was really good, and I think that's kind of what's driving. We all know that football in general suffers from recency bias, and I think that's what it is. Personally, I have this weird feeling that you mentioned it. The Patriots have never come out and throttled someone in a Super Bowl. I think this is it. Because I think we all know, we've heard what's going on with and I think the whole Rift thing was too big of everyone made too big of a deal. I don't think there's turmoil in the building and all that crap, but we all know that it is kind of the end of an era. They're losing 2 coordinators. No one knows how long Belichick's going to stick it out for. Brady's definitely, as much as he's found the fountain of youth, he's going to be, his arm's going to fall off at some point. So I think we all know that it's coming close to the end, and I could just see them coming out and really, really just making a statement in this one and going out on a high note.
I don't think I disagree with you, actually, but I have a bit of a different theory on it. Were the Eagles home dogs again last week to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was 2 weeks in a row. They were home dogs, so just feeling slighted, and obviously we're in front of their hometown crowd and pumped up, and played an awesome game and kind of tore apart one of the best defenses in the league. But now they're getting a 2-week break, going to a neutral field and playing against the smartest coaching staff, it seems, in recent memory and over the last 15 years, basically, in the NFL. So I could see that they come down off last week and come up flat, and also they just have Belichick and Brady scheming against them, so they're going to know how to shut them down, and the Patriots just steamroll them. It could be a very exciting game if they just crush them.
That sounds exciting to me, though.
Well,
but I understand where you're coming from. No, I've been telling everybody that take any points under 7. I think they beat them by a touchdown at least, but they're not going to catch the Patriots off guard like they will the Vikings. The Patriots just aren't going to get caught off guard by a team like that for some reason. It's just there's no way they let Nick Foles do something like that to them. And then if they get a couple quick touchdowns and get a 14-point lead or have 14-point lead, that's going to put them in a very uncomfortable position right off the bat. So I'd love to see a game where the Patriots throttle them. I know it's not what people want to see. You want to see good defense, things like that. But I want to see Brady come out and just have a outstanding, crazy game and just go down in history like that.
I think the flip side of that, though, is if the Eagles can come out and get a big lead, um, we've seen the Super Bowl last year with Atlanta, and then last week with Jacksonville. Teams get a big lead on them, and then if they play safe, Patriots just come back, they chip away and eat away, and eventually they'll beat you. So if I don't expect it really, but if they happen to come out and get a big lead, maybe a couple big splash plays, some deep balls to like Aguilar or Torrey Smith or whatever, and score some touchdowns, they just have to keep their foot on the gas because I think that's the only way they stand a chance. Otherwise, it's just going to be the exact same story that we've seen last year in the Super Bowl and last week in the championship game. That they will just find a way to claw their way back in, and they will outcoach you and outplay you to the finish.
I think that's what it boils down to for me, and why I don't think that the Eagles can win this game is because you mentioned the two games that I would have referenced, Jacksonville and then obviously last year's Super Bowl against Atlanta. It takes a full 60 minutes to beat the Patriots. You have to play the entire game, and you have to have a game plan all the way through, and you have to be able to adapt your game plan as you go. And then we've seen it time and time again in the NFL. I said it on the Falafel House podcast a bunch of times. I think the Patriots' dominance over this however many years has not so much been their dominance more than they just have their crap together more than any other team. They don't let those little things happen at the ends of games. They don't make those mistakes where, the opposing coach just craps all over themselves and screws something up, and then they take advantage of that. That's what the Patriots do. They wait for the other team to make the mistake, and they're always in it enough to the point where when that does happen, they can pounce on it. And so for me, with this game, I see the same thing. Even if the Eagles can keep it close or even get out to a little bit of a lead, I don't know that they can put together a full 60 minutes. So you'll see, come mid-fourth quarter, you'll start to see those cracks where they can't hold it together, make some mental mistakes, and then boom, the Patriots are right in it again.
Yeah, they're just one of those teams that don't make, like you said, those stupid coaching mistakes that you see other teams make. Like, I'm a Bears fan too, so we always see a timeout in the first drive of the game. It's just something the Bears do. They like to call timeout early, blow one away. You just don't see the Patriots do things like that. Or like the Jaguars. At the end of the first half last week, when the Jaguars took those two knees with 2 timeouts and 50 seconds left on the clock, I knew they were toast. What are you doing? You're not even trying at that point. And then when you see the Eagles, what they did with less time on the clock, only 1 timeout, I think, and get 3 extra points. And those 3 points are huge when you're down that far already. So it's interesting to see. I think if it's close, the Eagles will keep trying to go for it. But with Nick Foles, I think that could turn into some mistakes, and I think the Patriots will try and take advantage of it. Just obviously didn't work for the Vikings. The Vikings had a lot of injuries last week, and I think that was a huge part of what happened to them. But we'll see. I'm on the Patriots pretty hard too, so not just because I'm a fan. No bias there, but
it's little things too. Like you see, obviously being someone that goes to the Patriots games, you see it and I'm sure everyone else sees it too. It's those little things like knowing that you're getting the ball in the second half and getting that last score, even if it's a field goal right before halftime, so that you're possessing the ball to end the first half. You get some points, and then you come back out and you get the ball back. I've never seen a team in all my years of watching football, I've never seen teams regularly do that and time the game that well, have a strategic plan to make sure that they're getting the ball at strategic times. It's uncanny how well they're able to do things like that.
Like I said, they're one of the smartest coaching staffs in the league, and they scheme week to week and change things up. And I mean, it's always talked about among the fantasy Twitter, fantasy community, how it's hard to trust Patriots players fantasy wise because you never know who's going to be featured what week. But that's simply because they switch things up on offense and defense every game to scheme towards the other team's weaknesses. Shut down their strong points and scheme towards their weaknesses on offense. And there's nobody else that seems to be able to coach that way. There may be people that try it, but nobody's nearly as successful as they are.
Yeah, last year I watched pretty much the whole second half of the game outside, looking into the window because I was so mad. But this year I expect to just be a lot more calm, I think.
I'm just picturing like Jason sitting outside, kind of crying and rocking himself into comfort as he stares at the screen and slowly gets more excited as they inch their way back into the game.
So I have
There were only a little bit of tears.
I share season tickets with a couple of my buddies, and they both went to the Super Bowl last year. They make a lot more money than I do, and they were able to go. I didn't want to spend the cash, and about right about the maybe like first couple minutes into the third quarter, I had a couple of people text me to say, "Hey, I bet you're really glad you didn't put up the money to go."
Oh,
And
no.
to each of them, my response was, "Yeah, unless they win." Sort of half joking. So, yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, it's one of those things, man. The Super Bowl is so expensive to go, and with it being in Minnesota, I thought about trying to go, but it'd be worth the money. I just can't swing that right now. It's just crazy how it was like $4,000 for a StubHub ticket or whatever. If you're not,
Yeah, I looked it up. I was planning on trying to go this year as well, and because I didn't go last year, and I still hate myself for not going because.
right?
But last year I ran into the same thing I ran into last year. I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's $7,000 minimum for me because you're talking ticket, flight, hotel, $7,000 for one game. And then on top of that, you add in the bar tab and the food and all the stuff that you got to buy too. And souvenirs and whatnot. I mean, all in, you're talking at least $8,000-9,000. And last year I looked at that and I was like, last year my daughter was one and I'm like, she's got to go to college someday. How am I going to take $7,000 out of her college fund to go, or not put $7,000 in her college fund and instead go to a game, like one game? I couldn't do it.
Yeah. How's she going to get a parking pass without her $7,000? That's
right.
what college costs nowadays, right?
That's
right. Yeah, we were.
All right. Well, let's. No, go ahead.
No, I'll move on. I was just going to tell a story about a pharmacist I work with was gifted free tickets from the Minnesota Vikings this year because of a mishap at a game last year, and we were trying to find any loophole in the way because they gave her a choice of whatever game she wanted, but they worded it in a specific way that kind of limited it. But we were trying to find a loophole to get her free tickets to the Super Bowl, but they didn't bite.
A little smarter than that, huh?
Yeah.
We'll jump into some fantasy football. This is a fantasy football podcast, I think, sometimes.
Sure.
Marginally.
We can't talk about rookies yet because I don't really know anything about any of the rookies yet. But one thing I do want to talk about is trading. All three of us have been dealing with trading all week, I think, and Derek's been asking me about trading every day since the end of the regular season, I think.
Pretty much.
But it seems like a bad time to trade. And I've been telling Derek this because I think a better time to trade is more towards rookie fever. But am I wrong in thinking this? Because, I mean, we're in the 2 capitalist pigs leagues. And there's probably been 100 trades this week, I feel like. It's Thursday. So it's just like a crazy thing where we're seeing 2 or 3 upwards of, double-digit trades a day. It's like a weird time to trade, but apparently not for everybody.
So I've been thinking about this because you've obviously told me numerous times that you think now's a bad time to trade, and I think that it's bad in the sense that it's so far out from next year, and there is basically no new information really, other than maybe if you're looking at acquiring some of the players who are still currently playing. But there's so much up in the air in terms of free agency, rookie drafts, injuries, all these things. But I think that now's the time where, like, most of the things that I'm acting on are actually just things in my gut that are telling me I want to move a player because of certain things, or I want to get a player before some news comes out that increases their value. So, and then if you look at what John Bosch is doing in Pigs 1, he's just executing a strategy that in a slow play on acquiring all this money and picks and stuff so he could load up on actual players now. And on paper, I've been messaging with him a lot today because he's had a bunch happening, but on paper, he's executing his plan to a T. We'll still see how it actually plays out. But he was telling me that he was getting messages from people discouraged and truly angry, and I was like, you want to go here? And I still see a path to failure for him, and I still see a path where I can beat him. So I'm still going to hope it goes down that route. But yeah, I see your points that it might be a bad time to trade, but it's maybe trying to act before there's any news that changes the situation, and hopefully it's news that increases value of players to trade for more than the opposite. But again, I think that's kind of exactly why this is the Gut Feeling podcast. It's just on gut feeling. It's not really based on actual news.
So I think it's amusing, first of all, that Jason's telling you not to trade. And it's a bad time to trade, considering he and I just made a deal like 3 days ago. That's amusing to me.
I made 3 or 4 trades this week, I think.
Yeah, so
it's a time to trade.
So that's amusing to me. But I think I think you hit the nail on the head there, Derek, because it's all right now. Deals that are being made is 100% all about maximizing value. And when you're trading, you're obviously always trying to do that. But I think right now is a good time to do that if you can be disciplined with what you're doing. So, and the reason I say that is because there is so much unknown, and you can certainly take advantage of that. In one of the dynasty leagues that I'm in, it's a bankroll league similar to Capitalist Pigs in setup, 14 teams, super flex kind of thing. And I traded Jimmy Garoppolo and DeAndre Hopkins this week for Ben Roethlisberger, Amari Cooper, and a ton of cash. Now, the reason I did that is because I felt like I was getting the absolute top ceiling value for both Garoppolo and Nuke at the time, because I don't think their value is going to get any higher. Right now, Nuke is thought of as one of a top, maybe 3 in a lot of places. People you see him ranked as the number 1 wide receiver. So, and Jimmy Garoppolo's, we all know that his value is off the charts right now. And I don't think either of them are going to have value like this again, because I think that they'll come back down to earth when you start to see, some new pieces enter the league and rookies, and some, as you get closer to the season when things start to calm down a little bit. So I wanted to maximize those values. And on the flip side, take advantage of some guys that I had perceived lower values, like Amari Cooper, who just came off a bad season, but I think he's still talented. And Ben Roethlisberger, who's a good quarterback, but is towards the end of his career, so people are looking to ship him off because they don't think it's only a year or 2 left. So I ended up maximizing that and getting a ton of cash. And so I think that's the plan right now. In this time when you're trading, you have to do that. But the caveat to that, like I said, is you have to be disciplined, because there is so much deals going on. There's so much conversation going on that you can kind of get caught up in it, and then you're not maximizing value, and you may be over projecting what might happen in the draft and digging too far, and then you can get yourself into a hole.
Yeah. Like you said, Kevin, we just made a deal, and I kind of want to touch on that real quick. You ended up trading me Jared Goff, and I ended up giving you Teddy Bridgewater, Allen Robinson. Yeah, and $225 bid dollars, which is essentially a high first round pick. I have the 102 in that league, and that's worth 228. So basically, I gave you that. But the weird thing that stood out to me about Jared Goff is that I might have bought on the high side, but at the same time, like DLF ADP and some other ADPs that I've seen have him like around 10 or 11 at quarterback. And then when I was talking to John Olson, we've been trying to make deals too. He's like, you know what? I just saw this, and Jared Goff is listed at number 5. And I'm like, seems a little crazy to me, but at the same time, maybe it'll get up there. So it was a guy that I was willing to put some money into. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater's a huge question mark. I don't know if he's going to be a starting quarterback next year. And then I essentially gave you Allen Robinson and then the first round for that. But the extra $25 that I threw on there at the end, we originally were at $200. I ended up charging to John Bosch in our trade because he wanted Diggs. So I'm like, look, he offered me $600. I'm like, I got to charge you $625 for this. And he's like, okay, fine. And then after it was done, I'm like, yeah, I just had to get my money back from Kevin because I ended up pushing it in so he would take Allen Robinson instead of Diggs so I can get this deal done too. But essentially sold my whole team.
It's funny, as you know, that we had a Twitter poll about Diggs versus Allen Robinson because I was going back and forth a lot. I had asked John Bosch about it. And so as soon as I saw both of those trades go down, I immediately sent him a message. And I was like, I should have known that you were the guy going after Diggs. But hey, it worked out for me because I got an extra 25 out of it and he had to pay an extra 25. But I'll tell you, the deal, it was really hard to give up Goff. I have Andrew Luck and Jimmy Garoppolo also on that roster. So I'm pretty set at quarterback. I had 3 good quarterbacks. I knew I wasn't going to have to worry about quarterback for a while. Obviously, Luck has some question marks at this point. I just talked about Jimmy Garoppolo's value is never going to be higher. So clearly that means I think his value will drop a little bit. But I do think he's going to be a good quarterback in fantasy in the Shanahan offense. So I thought that I could make the move, but it still hurts to give up a young quarterback, like you said, that has that upside of, I don't think he's ever going to be top 3, but he could easily, fall between 5 and 10 every single year for the next 10 years.
Similar to Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and that's tough to give up in this league. But the flip side, I obviously have good quarterbacks. I get Teddy Bridgewater, who, if he works out at all, it's just bonus for me. And I shore up a position that I had basically nothing in the cabinet with getting Allen Robinson, who I do think will come back from injury. And, if he ends up in the right situation, can get back to being a top receiver in the league.
So just to also, to touch on some of the other trades, I got to look at this now because Jason's talking about how he sold his whole team off and got some money. And I think you have around $1,400 right now, Jason. Is that right?
Right now I have like 400 in cash, and then I have like about 1,000 or like maybe 800 coming back to me in like Devy and rookie, mostly Devy because I wanted that from John, and then rookie picks.
So like 12 to 1,400 in that either way. Or
Right.
like then you look at like I was saying, John has been executing this strategy here just this week alone, or in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. He's acquired Jordan Howard, Mark Ingram. I think Dion Lewis. Maybe he had Lewis already.
Got him from Carl.
Right. Des Bryant, Stephon Diggs, Julio Jones, Travis Kelce, I think, maybe Austin Hooper, and he also has Odell Beckham, and he still has $1,400 or so right now to spend. So he's acquired all of those guys and still has so many assets. He's executing this pretty well, perfectly.
Yeah, this is a league that I'm kind of stuck on. But the reason I wanted to push in for Jared Goff is I have Jameis Winston as my other quarterback. And they're just 2 guys who I don't think are going to lose their starting jobs anytime soon. So I can lock in a quarterback for maybe 5-10 years, and I can try and replace that other. Like I was stacked at wide receiver for like a bunch of high-end wide receiver 2s, basically. Well, Diggs is a wide receiver 1, I think. But I was able to just use those guys to just secure quarterback. Kind of like what Kevin was saying. He's like, he's like, I'm set. I don't need to trade anybody, but luckily, I got him to budge on it.
Yeah, I really didn't need to trade. Well, I needed a wide receiver, so I needed to trade something. But I did have some other assets that I can move. I could have stuck with my quarterbacks, waited it out a little bit. But I thought that I needed the wide receiver, and that's what really convinced me. Plus, it's kind of nice to have some cash because for a while in this league, I had none. So. It's nice to be able to know that I might be able to pick up a rookie or 2, none of the top guys, but obviously you just talked about some of the money that's still left in the league. But if I can grab a couple of Devy picks or rookies and start to rebuild some of the youth, then I'll be happy.
Thought about something else I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. So that's good. So have you guys done any of the early best balls on the draft app yet?
Maybe.
So they gave me a free ticket. It's just like a $1 try out the early best balls. So I was like, might as well jump in. I don't really plan on doing too many because I just get a little draft crazy more during football season, so I don't want to push in too much. But Alvin Kamara went 101 in the one I did.
101.
And, yeah, like as soon as he came off the board, I thought I was going to win it. Like I'm like, okay, well, I just won this one. But is that crazy to you guys? Like, is he up there now? Because I mean, I saw him on the ADP at like 11 or 12 for Dynasty, but then 101 in redraft was crazy to me.
Well, I think you guys have talked about it on your podcast. It was a few weeks ago that Adam Rank said that he would take Kamara 101 in redraft at any point, right, Kevin? But
yeah,
I think that is a little bit crazy because there's been numerous people who've put out the stats that he had probably the most efficient and a historic season for a rookie running back, that it's almost impossible that he sustains that, or at least his touchdown rate. I mean, there's still obvious to say that he's young and he did that as a rookie, and it's incredible, and he's going to progress hopefully and just keep getting better. But there's certain parts of that are going to regress. So I think it's pretty crazy to take him as the 101, especially when you look at like the type of season that Gurley had in that offense and how it's way more likely that he sustains that type of production than someone like Kamara. But to your first question, I have not done any of the drafts yet, and I definitely need to jump in some. I didn't do a single best ball list last year, but I would love to do one of these early, way too early best balls on Draft App.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's one of the best things about doing the Draft App best balls this early. For one, they opened like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, which is awesome.
Right. It was right after the fantasy playoffs, basically.
Yeah. I love how they do that because it's we're all degenerates and we all like getting into fantasy, and but that's the best thing, right? You can take Kamara at the 101 because for one, it's $1 entry. You probably got him for free, and at the same time, who knows? Maybe it does work out for you. Maybe he is that good, and you know what I mean. It's a $1 entry to a best ball that will include no other rookies. So all the rookies that get drafted this next year it doesn't have those in there. So you're talking about just guys from this player pool, and you'll have some guys like DeMarco Murray that won't be probably won't be involved much, and guys like that kind of fall off. But that's one of the fun things about doing these best balls this early is, why not take a chance? It's fun.
I guess that's a good point. If you're doing this best ball right now, and like you said, those rookies aren't included, and you've got a free $1 entry into it from the draft because they're awesome and do that for you. If you want to go out and degaff your draft just like Jay Cutler in a Dolphins uniform, you might as well do it. And I mean, maybe it'll pay off. Maybe it'll pay off in the end. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do literally anything you want with these kind of drafts, especially because, like you said, it's $1. So even if you didn't get the free entry, you can throw $1 down and it'll be good. And you can try taking a quarterback first overall. I wouldn't recommend it because you can get them pretty late in those things. But or you can just take all Patriots if you're like Jason and I, and you want to just have one team where it's literally all Patriots. You can do that. It's a lot of fun. It's
Jason's team has to be all Patriots and Bears. Just
I got a bigger player pool than everybody else.
Yeah, that is a little unfair. That's why you have two teams.
Yeah, exactly. My buddy and I, maybe 10 years ago, playing fantasy football. It had to have been less than that, but we were like, all right, let's get into the same like public draft, ESPN draft. And I'm like, I'll draft all Bears players, you draft all Vikings players. We'll see what happens. And I forget what year it was, but both of us ended up making the fantasy playoffs. And I'm like, what? This shouldn't happen at all. I I think we both got eliminated first round, but it was like, why are we even winning in this? But it was funny to do, and it ended up working out. I ended up getting like the whole team basically, but that's funny. But yeah, these the draft app drafts are interesting so far. I just pulled up my team that I did, and I'm off to a great start. I've got Robbie Anderson on my team, so sweet.
You might be in
A
jail.
little too early.
Winning.
All right. So I'm not a big Robbie guy, so I backed him up with Diggs and Adams and my boy Marvin Jones.
Yeah,
When was
nobody
the
likes
last-
Robbie. You should have picked DT instead.
When was the last podcast that you guys did that didn't include Robbie Anderson being brought up at least once?
Well, it's part of the contract, so we have to bring him up.
It's fine. We're contractually obligated.
To be honest,
Right, exactly.
As soon as we started talking about this, if we got to the end of the podcast and he hadn't been mentioned, I was just going to throw his name out there just randomly.
Just thank him.
Right. So let's talk about him.
Thank him for being Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have much to talk about Robbie Anderson next season.
No, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be playing. All right.
There'll be a new.
you guys,
there will be a new Robbie Anderson.
Our Darius
I'm
Stewart.
sure there will.
Our Darius Stewart will be the new Robbie Anderson.
But I jumped on the draft app and done the early best balls. They're running now. I'm assuming they just run through the whole season until this is the right time for best balls drafts. But go to playdraft.com/falafel and you can sign up and play against us and take our early money. Don't let me draft Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, challenge Steve. Sid Skeet, SIDSKEAT. Sid Skeet. Challenge him. He's easy money.
I think he had a successful regular season, so I can't talk too much about him.
we did record a Falafel House podcast just before I jumped on with you guys, and we did just spent like 5 minutes on his Capitalist Pigs 2 team, and the whole setup for it was me talking about how mediocre it is in every way, shape, and form. So, and actually, it's a good topic. I'm curious what you guys think, because when you're in that position, and we all have teams that are like that. I was giving Steve hell, but obviously, it's something that we all deal with. Eventually, you get to a point where your team might be stuck kind of middle of the road. And my question to Steve was really more centered around, what do you do? Like, do you try to slowly accumulate assets and build up to get yourself into the next tier, or do you blow it up? I mean, what's the move there? And I mean, I guess you can go either way, but we all know being in the middle is terrible. So you got to do something.
So I think you got to make the call of either you sell the lower tier assets and the picks that you have to try and acquire other players, big name players, if you think you have enough to do it. Or, again, I know we mentioned it already, but this is what John did in Pigs 1, is he had a middle of the road team. He took every asset that he had value and tried to sell it for picks and cash. And he did. And now he's taken those picks and cash, which have turned out to be great. And he did the same thing on waiver wire guys he picked up off the waiver. He would just sell them for anything if he could. Like, he sold me Case Keenum for $5. So if you fully commit to selling off everyone that has any value and knowing that you're going to suck for a year, if you gain enough cash value in that league, you can turn around and do what he's doing in Pigs 1 right now and go to an instant contender or instant favorite possibly, because you can load up on players and maybe still have enough money to get rookies, like veterans and rookies. So you could set yourself up for the future.
Yeah, it's tough to tell. I know we've been talking about it all night, but in the Capitalist Pigs 1 league, I took over that team and it was really, really bad. And I'm like, I thought I was kind of in the middle of the road, but apparently I was worse than that. Well, eventually I just decided, take the guys that I have and just sell them. Well, I ended up getting a high draft pick and getting extra cash, so that definitely pushed me to just get money. But I'm just taking the road where I need to secure a position first. So that's why I started acquiring all those wide receivers. And I'm like, I'm just going to lock down wide receivers and then just go from there. Well, once I realized that wide receivers are basically garbage in that league, I'm like, okay, sell them off. Let's lock down a different position, which is why I went for the quarterbacks. But you definitely don't want to be in the middle. That's for sure. And I think it depends on players. So like if your players are older, maybe you do just try and get what you can get for them, while they're still productive, and then just build from there. Obviously, your team's going to score the less points, so you'll get higher draft picks. But you need to do something. You can't just sit in the middle. I see so many teams, even in the Pigs leagues, which is a lot of very good owners. There's some where I'm like, you're not really taking a direction on these. You gotta decide something.
Well, since you said it, Kevin, I just pulled up Steve's roster just to kind of look at it and get an idea. And you're right, like he's got some decent pieces, but he's not just the way that the teams are structured in that league. He's not just a couple pieces here or there away from being a contender. So it's almost, you got to think about, are you ready to commit to the rebuild in the long haul to try and get those assets? And that's a tough decision to make because I don't know, most of us are competitors, and if you're not one of the ones that likes to do productive struggle or rebuilds, it can be hard to commit to the fact that you're going to lose for a year or two to try and gain top draft pick assets and be able to trade them off later.
Yeah, and it's tough because you feel like you should always be working towards something, and then, but the struggle is what you're working for. So you can't get impatient with it, right? If you go down that path, you have to go down, and you have to fully commit, and you have to have a time frame plan. Like you've brought up John, what John Bosch has done in Pigs 1, so, a few times, and I agree with you. It's been brilliant what he's done. His team is scary good right now, and he still has cash to get good rookies. So I am fully on board with you. But you can tell that, like you said, he had a plan and was willing to execute it and work at it. And I think he knew that this was the time when he was going to put it into action, right? I think he expected this is when it was going to be. So he had everything geared around like that time frame. And that makes sense to me. A lot of times people in the middle or when they're doing the productive struggle don't really have that end game in mind. They know what it is, but they don't have a time frame of when they want to execute it, because it may not be, you have to decide, because it may be more than one season, right? So if you're going to go 2 seasons, you have to have that in mind so you don't make those mistakes and just kind of say, all right, well, I got to grab this player and this player and this player and overpay for a couple players and then end up setting yourself back without getting to that top tier. So you have to know your time frames too, and get a real sense of what's it going to take to get to the top. Pigs is obviously different because there are so many savvy owners, and I think Bosch himself and Pigs 2 coined the phrase, it's not a league, it's an arms race. Like it's just unbelievable how there's some teams that are so top heavy in that league, and then like my team, for example, in Pigs 2, I thought I had a great team, and it wasn't even close to good enough to win the league. So it's very tough. But so in other leagues, you may be able to do it a little quicker, but I think you really have to have a plan for your time frames and how long it's going to take you.
Yeah, and it's totally about being committed to that strategy, because it's going to take some time and patience to execute it properly.
Yeah, and kind of bringing around 2 topics that we've talked about. I think that this is actually a good time to trade depending on who you're targeting. Like, I think there's players out there that had decent seasons that their value hasn't really risen. So if you take a look at some of the ADPs now, you can see players that are in the same range as last year, even though they had a successful season. The guy I talked about earlier, Marvin Jones, I think is one of those guys. Like, he had a wide receiver 1 season, and his value just didn't move at all. So maybe it's a fluke season, but I think those are the types of guys that you have to gamble on. If they start off strong again, then teams that are competing right now, or the top of the teams, they're going to pay a little bit more for guys like that. So I think he's one of those guys that you would want to target, and just guys that were successful, but their value didn't seem to change, which is weird to me.
Well, yeah,
Or
like
guys like Amari Cooper, who last year was worth 3 firsts, and now he's worth a mid first or 104 or whatever we talked about earlier.
Well, yeah, you just mentioned Marvin Jones, like Golden Tate. I just acquired him in Pigs too for a reasonably cheap price, but he had he was wide receiver 12 or something this year, or depending on your format. But he was in either a low end wide receiver 1 or a high end wide receiver 2, and he's still in the January ADP on DLF is is going at 52nd overall. So he's another one of those guys that's kind of just doesn't catch up, and Cooper dropping down to like exactly like Kevin, you said you acquired him earlier or recently in another dynasty league. Like, if you think that he's going to go back up to being 3 first, like now's a great time to go grab him. I've been kind of wanting to get off the Mike Evans train because everybody is down on him after kind of a bad season, but he missed a game due to suspension and had their offense just sucked this year, and he was still wide receiver 17 in PPR formats. So like I think he's the first wide receiver in, I don't know what the stat was, but to have his first 4 seasons be top 24 fantasy football seasons, like he still had an okay year, but everybody's so down on him, so it's a bad time to move him. But he'll probably bounce back up.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that you've asked me quite a few times about, and I just keep telling you the same thing. I'm like, if you're selling now, you're selling low, and it's not like he's not being productive, and he's still even entering what's supposed to be the prime of his career. So it's one of those guys that, yes, I understand why you're concerned, but he's still productive. Maybe just don't imagine him as he's supposed to be your top 5 guy or whatever. Just he's a productive guy, and he has the potential to be even more productive than he is now. So he's one of those guys that I don't particularly care for, but at the same time, I wouldn't be selling if I had him. I don't have anything else to talk about tonight, though, guys.
I'm about out too.
I'm getting ready to watch the Pro Bowl. I'm going to start watching practices. Do they air practices? I don't even know.
Don't they have like skills competitions? Isn't that what they do now?
I think they brought those back in the last couple of years, but
I don't know. You know when I soured, you might, Jason, as a fellow Patriots fan, you might know when I soured on, maybe this was before your time, I can't remember. When I really soured on the Pro Bowl is when Robert Edwards blew his knee out playing beach volleyball after a brilliant rookie season.
Well, I don't remember that, but that's brutal way to go out. See, so I don't want to talk too much about the Pro Bowl, but somebody said like let him play dodgeball or something. Is that something you guys would watch if they guys went out there and played a bunch of weird games, I guess?
If they were playing against like Globo Gym and Stiller, then maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what's funny?
I don't know what they could do.
Sorry, this is a little off topic, but I had to Google Robert Edwards and pull up his Wikipedia page, and Derek, he played in the CFL afterwards after his recent injury. So
people making comebacks. I hear
played for something called an Alouette and something called an Argonaut. I don't know what that means, but
yeah, they're birds and boatmen. I hear Johnny Manziel might try and sign a contract with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So I mean, we can open and close here with CFL football stuff. Why not?
Hey, former Bears coach Mark Trestman is like the greatest Canadian Football League coach of all time, isn't he?
He is. He won multiple championships with the Alouettes, and then he just took a last place Argonauts team and turned them around, and they won the Grey Cup this year too. So, he couldn't do it in the NFL, but man, he can sure do it in the CFL.
If only he could have done anything in the NFL. But yeah, I mean that's all I've got. Kevin, thanks again for jumping on with us, and good luck to the Patriots this weekend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. You can find the show on Twitter at GutFeelsPod. I think that's what our handle is. I don't even remember. Jason is at Jason Tran. I am at the FFRX, and Kevin is at Wally Central.
Just look for the toilet.
Bathroom
Oh
Kevin.
my God. I
Did
saw
you know
that
you
today
could-
after I DM'd you guys, and I was like, "This is." It just shows the toilet, and then it shows Derek's name. I'm like, "This is amazing."
Did you know you can make your Twitter handle an emoji?
Not until I saw yours, but
So
Right.
anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, look for the toilet. You'll see Kevin. I'm sure there'll be some celebrating in 2 weeks, not this weekend, unless we're rooting for the. I don't know.
I can't wait till the Eagles win and prove us all wrong.
You shut your mouth.